We're off and running. All right, thank you.
So guys, I'm excited to be here with you all today. Shout out to everyone joining us via Zoom. This is an amazing experience. I know that we're going to be able to get into some Q&A. Isn't that right, Jason? Isn't that how we're doing it?
Oh yeah, town halls, it'll be great. Whatever you're gonna do.
Yeah, so we'll get into some Q&A, but I just wanted to first say I'm from the big city of Denmark, South Carolina. I don't know how many of you all have been to Denmark, South Carolina, where we got 3 stoplights and a blinking light and an amazing wee bakery. And my mom and dad always tell me that the 2 most important words in the English language are the words thank you, and they're not nearly said enough. And so I just want to start off by saying thank you guys for inviting me back, which means that I must have done something right the first time, or I'm back to repair my image from the first time. Either way, I am glad to be back. So my name is Bakari Sellers. I actually wrote this cool book in the middle. This is actually a book by Jim Sciutto, who is a good friend of mine, anchor on CNN. This is a book by Paul Begala. I like to give my friends free publicity on TV. And this book here is mine. It's called My Vanishing Country. And that little handsome guy right there is my 6-year-old self that I was on my way to Summer League basketball with my socks pulled up, those kind of ugly blue and green socks pulled up. And so I'm very proud of this. It's kind of, I think I'm the first New York Times bestseller from Denmark. So I'll take that as I hope they make me Grand Marshal of the Dogwood Festival Parade for that one. But it's been pretty cool. I was on the New York Times bestsellers list for 3 weeks and have sold over 70,000 copies of the book since it came out May 19th. So basically what I did was and let me just start by saying that I wrote this book in 4 to 5 months. It's 240 pages. It's 65,000 words. I sat down every day for about 15 minutes a day. And sometimes you don't write anything. You just sat there, your brain was on freeze. And sometimes you wrote for an hour or 2. But each day I always sat down for at least 15 minutes to work on it. The reason I had to work so fast is because there's another young man whose book is supposed to come out this fall. It was supposed to come out earlier, but it's coming out this fall, allegedly, by the name of Barack Hussein Obama. And nobody wants to compete with Barack Obama when his books drop. Because if you have $30, who you gonna buy? Whose book are you gonna buy? Bakari Sellers or Barack Obama, right? Yeah. So we worked extremely hard. And the good part about that is this book is done well. So I'll share with you guys a secret, since it's just me and 82 of my closest friends. I have a children's book coming out, which I'm so excited about. Next summer. And then in 2022, I have 9 months to write my next book. So I've already signed both of those book deals and really, really excited about that. I also have a pretty cool podcast that I just started. We've had some guests like Hillary Clinton on it. We've had Deshaun Watson, who's the quarterback for the Houston Texans, on it. We've had Asia Wilson, who is the first number 1 pick in the WNBA draft. Amazing former Gamecock on it. I'm actually taping another episode today. We've had Jamie Harrison on it. We're going to have Tim Scott in the future on it. So it's just an amazing opportunity to sit down with me. And I give a brief introduction and have a 30 to 45 minute conversation. And then also I do this thing in the same exact spot all throughout the day, multiple times a day. I actually just got off of TV, but I am a CNN political commentator. And so usually right now I would not be with you guys. Maybe by Zoom, I could probably do it, but I would be in Milwaukee for the DNC and then come home for a week and then go to, I would be home anyway. The RNC's in Charlotte. And so I travel all around and I'm on TV most nights. Tonight I'm on with Aaron Burnett at 7 o'clock. You can catch me on with Aaron or Chris Cuomo or Anderson Cooper. And the cool part about that is I'm from a small town where we have like 3,500 citizens. And every night I speak to about 1 million people. And you know, with HD now and the way that the system we use, I actually use the same setup. I have lights all around me so you can kind of see the lighting a little bit if I move up or move back. But everybody gets the chance. They look all in your face and in your mouth. They get a chance to tell you all your imperfections. People tweet at you mean things about your lineup and get a haircut. This is only my second quarantine haircut since March. So I'm actually looking pretty fresh today. But you know, I'm doing a lot. And the most amazing thing that I have on my plate is that I am a husband to an amazing wife. This is our 5-year anniversary, so just pray for me every single day. That's another job, but I digress. And then I have a 15-year-old who starts school tomorrow, and I have twins that are 19 months old. So if any of you all want a little brother or little sister, just show up. We will wrap them up and put them on the steps. You can choose a boy or a girl, whichever one you want. You can choose. And so that's who I am. That's what I'm doing. I graduated from Orangeburg Wilkinson High School. I went to Morehouse College, and then I came back home, and I'm a Gamecock. I went to the University of South Carolina School of Law. The unique thing about the story, and something that I tell groups like you all, is people kind of get caught up in how old I was. How old is everybody on here on this call, Jason?
8 to 18.
8 to 18. Okay, so we have a wide range.
Yeah.
So I went to high school when I was 12. I went to college when I was 16. I graduated college at 20, and I graduated law school at 23. I skipped 2 halves and a whole when I was younger, and they tried to get me to skip ninth, but I didn't want to. But I was really young when I did a lot of things in South Carolina, including my first year of law school. I ran for the South Carolina State House of Representatives, and I was 21 years old. I was the youngest person to ever be elected in South Carolina. Now, I will tell you that David Beasley also says he's the youngest person to ever be elected, but David Beasley also says that he ran a 10-8 in the 100 at Clemson, and that ain't true either. David and I are really close, and I do want to tell you I'm the youngest person to win an election in South Carolina. I was 21 years old. I beat somebody who was 82 years old and had been in office for 24 years. By the way, Amelia, that's the coolest t-shirt I've seen in the background right there. Is that a t-shirt? That is so awesome. Is that Dad? That is cool. Tell Dad I need to rock one of those one day. You know.
So sorry.
No, it's dope. I like it. And so, you know, it's a really cool and amazing experience that I had. I got a chance to we represent about 35,700 people in the South Carolina State House, and you represent about 99,000 in the state Senate. And I was 21 years old. I served there for a decade. And then after that decade was up, I ran for the lieutenant governor in 2014. I got 42% of the vote, and I was beat by Henry McMaster. So I have a really weird place in American history today, because if I would have beaten Henry McMaster, Nikki Haley would not have been the United States ambassador to the UN. Things would have changed drastically differently. She might have run for president at the time. Who knows? Well, no, she couldn't, because she was still governor. But who knows what would have happened? But I didn't. So here we are. And I've had some amazing opportunities since then. And so we'll have an opportunity you can ask me absolutely anything about anything that's going on in the world. I'm only 35 years old. I haven't been in politics yet long enough to lie to you. But I want to be a resource for all of you all. So as you guys grow up and as you come out and help me change the world, I want you to realize that you all are not the leaders of the future. None of you all are. You're the leaders of right now. All right. And so you guys are a part of Generation Z, which, by the way, you guys should pool your money together and your resources, like sell candy or lemonade or whatever, and hire a publicist, because Generation Z is a god-awful name. You guys need to come up with a better generational name. Generation Z sounds like the end of a really bad Netflix movie. And so you guys are really cool, though, because right now Generation Z is on the forefront of changing gun laws in this country, being very active in our political system. And like 2 years ago, we were worried about you guys eating Tide Pods. And so you've evolved, right? And so you guys are a really, really dynamic generation. Just know that all of your personal information is probably somewhere in China right now, because you spend way too much time on TikTok. But other than that, you are a truly fascinating generation that I expect so much from. And I expect you all to help me change the world. So Jason, what questions do we have from this amazing group today?
Well, so students who are here in the spring, this is our first speaker of the year. We really haven't been together in a long time. So you should do the virtual hand raising, and that creates a queue on my screen. And so then I'll call on you, and you should then unmute, and then you can ask Mr. Sellers whatever you'd like. So let's get that going.
I think Ingrid has a question.
Yeah, I do. What was it like growing up?
That's a big question. I like big questions. That, Chris Cuomo asks big questions all the time on CNN. You might have a future in media. So growing up in Denmark, it's a very poor community, but we didn't know that we didn't have that much. It's in the corridor of shame, and I'm sure you guys have read about the corridor of shame and know about the corridor of shame. It's where kids go to school and their heating and air don't work, their infrastructure is falling apart. In 2010, we lost our hospital. So imagine if you break an arm or get sick, you got to go 30 to 45 minutes to the nearest hospital. The water is not potable, as they say. So I've actually, as a lawyer, I've actually filed suit against the city to try to get my hometown better drinking water. And it's just a very interesting place that it looks like it's caught back in another time frame. However, I'm glad you asked the question, because growing up, we didn't know what we didn't have. All right. And so we were very rich in culture, very rich in family. As Jason talked about, we would always say, like, who are your people, right? That was our thing, like, who are your people? So I was always little Cleve, little CL, named after my dad. I was related to everybody, like third or fourth cousins. We were all, everybody on one side of the tracks was related for sure. The other side of the tracks probably was distant. That means you could probably date them, so it was like, it was just, it was a family. It was a real family atmosphere. I'm Episcopalian, right? So every Sunday we had a Black Episcopal church and a white Episcopal church. Christ Church was the white one, the Black one was St. Philip's. And every Sunday I would go to church and we would have the president of Voorhees College, city council people, teachers, et cetera, who were all there together. And I was a product, and there, Ingrid, this is pretty cool to know, but there's this African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. And what that means is that it's not just your mom and dad, but it's everybody else in your community who helps to raise you. And so that's what it was like growing up in Denmark. Unique for me, though, is that my father was a civil rights activist, and my father was involved in the civil rights movement. He worked with people like John Lewis, who recently passed, and C.T. Vivian. My dad's been married twice, but his first wedding was actually done by Martin Luther King Jr. in a basement of a church in Atlanta. He marched with Dr. King. He was very good friends with Stokely Carmichael. I have to be careful about saying Stokely loudly because my toddler is named Stokely, and he would run around the corner and jump in my lap. He loves the camera. I don't know where he got that from, right? And so all of these people played a role in my life, and I'm still a product of that village, of being a child of the civil rights movement. So that was a really good question. But growing up in Denmark was, it made me who I am today.
All right, Will, you're up. Thanks, Ingrid.
Yeah, I want to thank you for coming and talking to us today. Really appreciate it. But I think my first question, with you having worked on President Barack Obama's South Carolina Steering Committee in 2008, what are your thoughts on previous Vice President and current Democratic nominee Joe Biden and any other candidates who are running for the office, such as Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, et cetera?
Who were running. So as of last night, there's no presumptive nominee anymore.
Yeah.
The cool part is, Joe Biden is the nominee. He, as a historical note, he will be the oldest person to inherit the White House. He actually will be older than Ronald Reagan was in his second term. Donald Trump, if he wins, he will be the oldest person to go into his second term. So we have two really, really old people running for president. That's kind of what I'm deducing here. I think Joe Biden is uniquely positioned to win the White House. However, I say that with a caveat because I got out of the prognostication business back in 2016 because I also got on national TV and told everybody Hillary Clinton was going to win. And so although she did win the popular vote, this is also a little known fact. If anybody ever asks you this, Hillary Clinton has gotten more votes for president than any white man in the history of this country. And you say, why do you couch the statement that way? Well, the number one vote getter in the history of the country is Barack Obama. Number two is Barack Obama. Number three is Hillary Clinton, which is just a kind of fascinating thing because the top five people all have in common one thing, that they all became president, except Hillary Clinton. But I think he has a great chance. I'm really, 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 really close with Senator Kamala Harris. We talk often. I spoke to her yesterday morning, kind of in preparation for tonight. I'm going to help her with her debate prep and October 7th against Vice President Pence. So I'm just happy to see everybody play their role. Tonight is going to be, the convention's weird, right? Because it's virtual. It's just kind of hard to do virtually. I really wish we were there. I spoke at the last convention in 2016, and it's it's unlike any feeling you'll ever have. I mean, you're in an arena with like 20,000 people chanting, and like you have to breathe and get through your words, and you're reading off a prompter, and the audience just takes you somewhere. So it's a really, really inspiring feeling. The lead up music when you come out is just, I mean, I think I came out to Nirvana, right? Like, how can you not be like amped up after like coming out to Nirvana, right? So it was a special feeling, and this is just difficult. But tonight, you have to be a really great orator to break through. Michelle Obama did really well on night one. Joe Biden did great last night, but tonight you have three really, really good speakers. I'm interested to see them. I like the science of the politics, and I like the oratory. So I'm looking forward to seeing Barack Obama tonight, Hillary Clinton tonight, and of course Kamala tonight. And I think it's going to be a closer race than people give it credit for. We just have close races. But to answer your question directly, it's going to boil down to Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona. Those are going to be the states that determine who the next president of the United States is.
Thanks, Will. Good question. All right, Kessler, you're up.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. I actually have two questions, but I'll give you the first one. So Politico identifies you as like a top Kamala Harris operative in South Carolina for her campaign. So why do you think she didn't do as well as was expected? There was a lot of, excitement around her campaign, and she kind of flatlined before Iowa. So why do you think that is?
Well, campaigns cost money. She raised about $40 million, and she raised more than some of her other opponents. However, the campaign, it ramped up. It got too big, too quick. And there were two things that happened in the race. If she becomes president, it would be a book that I would write. I mean, her candidacy for president was like a car accident. I would call the book Crash or Collision, because what happened was you had a campaign that wasn't run very well. Although you had she's by far, I think most people tell you she's probably she's one of the more talented, if not the most talented elected official in the Democratic Party. She's, that we have a few, but she's probably right up there in the top 2 or 3. But you had a campaign that was really struggling in running and defining a Black woman running for president. And then you had a media that had a great deal of trouble covering a Black woman for president because they hadn't seen one. This was a phenomenon. And when you have a campaign that's run poorly and you have media coverage that is covered poorly, you have a collision, which is why I would call it Crash.
And then my second question is, what are your thoughts on the Democratic wave of South Carolina, like Joe Cunningham winning the 1st district and Jamie Harrison allegedly being tied in Quinnipiac polling with Lindsey Graham and the new wave of candidates we have?
I actually appreciate the fact that you used the word allegedly. I think it's very tough for Jamie Harrison to win. I'm hopeful, but I just think it's very tough. I've run statewide in South Carolina, not in a presidential year either, which makes it even more difficult because the wins are just the voter turnout is something that's surreal. So, Kessler, you asked a good question, and let me just tell you, when you read a poll, the first thing you need to do always is turn the page, right? So whenever you're looking at a poll, never just read the poll, always read the crosstabs. You want to look at sampling size, you want to look at who they polled, you want to look at how many people they polled, whether or not they polled, R's +9 or whatever it may be. South Carolina is like a R +9, so a Republican +9 state. You want to see if it was polled as such. There will be a blue wave. Joe Cunningham is different, though. Joe Cunningham is somewhat of a unicorn in politics, and I appreciate that. He's somebody who kind of marches to the beat of his own drummer. I just had a brewery tour fundraiser with him last week or 2 weeks ago. He doesn't ascribe to, true partisan ideologies. He kind of just does what's best for the citizens of his district. So it's just he's a harken back to the old days of politics. He doesn't get caught up in the rah-rah partisanship, which is why he is successful. And I expect him to probably win I know his last race, he won by about a point or two. I expect him to probably win by closer to 5 or 6 this go round. It's just, he's just spending, you know, he has more money than God in District 1. So it's an easier trek for him. If there is a wave, that's a if, but if there is a wave, it would have to be a tsunami to carry Jamin Harrison over the hump, but we have seen tsunamis before. So what I would tell people is that when Jamie announced, he was at impossible. He went from being impossible to improbable to now he has a puncher's chance, which means that, you know, you get in the ring and you just, I mean, Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson, you just get caught by one shot. You know, you never know what happens. And now he has a puncher's chance.
All right, thanks, Kessler. Audrey, your turn.
Thank you for coming today. I only have one question. So, with the current political interest with Gen Z, what would you recommend to the younger children who can't vote yet but really want to be involved with the government of our country?
Definitely so that's a very simple answer for me. People always ask, how can I get involved? And all of us have these things right here, right? We all have these. We literally have the entire world at our fingertips. So advocating, getting involved in social media, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook. Do y'all even know what Facebook is? But regardless, like, you know, making sure that you are understanding, becoming a support. You can go volunteer for a local candidate. If you're 16 years old and you can be a poll worker, right? You can't even vote, but you can go volunteer at the polls. And you know, that's important now. We need young-ish poll workers. The reason being is because a lot of old folk with COVID and pre-existing conditions, they can't work the polls as they used to or usually do. So we need more young people out doing those things. You're never too young to become active for a candidate or a party. And so, you know, find something, understand what you're passionate about. Just don't go do something because your parents think you like, you know, have a Hillary Clinton poster in the kitchen or your parents have Make America Great hats all over the place. Like, understand who you are and what you stand for. Don't just do something because your parents lean one way or another or leave Sean Hannity on all day long in the house. Like, figure out who you are and then go out and find somebody who closely aligns with your values. I mean, if you like Joe Cunningham, after this, tell Jason to be like, look, I want to volunteer with Joe Cunningham. If you like Nancy Mace, tell Jason to call me. I know Nancy very well. So like we can do those things and put you in those places. But I would always say, follow your passion, figure out what you are politically, who you are politically, and go out there and just get involved.
Thank you, Audrey. Okay, Liam, your turn.
Hi, thank you for being here. My question was, do you feel any different with your work out for the world to read? Does that do you feel like someone might have something that could make it so you, like, how does your book being out in the world change you as a person?
That's a good question. So, you know, that's a really good question because I went through the stages of anxiety. Like first, you're like, man, I finished the book. I want to, and then you get copies, like they mail you big boxes of your book. And the first time you hold it, you're like, oh my God, my book is here. And then you get nervous because you're like, oh my God, like people are going to read this. Right. And so I tell the truth, like there's nothing about me that you probably won't know after you read the book, which is why 70,000 people have read the book, right? Or listened to it. A lot of people buy books Audible too, like 12,000 are Audible, but I digress. And so it's just, that's a really good question because you open yourself up to the entire world. You open yourself up to criticism. You open yourself up to love and adoration. But I will tell you, who asked that question, by the way?
That's Liam.
Liam, the reason that question is so good is because if you don't remember anything else I tell you guys today, always be true to yourself and speak your truth to power, right? And you may not know what that means today, Liam, but just write that down. Always, always be true to yourself. And I spoke my truth in this book. and just was like, you know, being elected, running for office, starting at the age of 20, being elected, winning a race at 21, sitting down at 22, you lived in a fishbowl your entire life. So people get a chance to see and they draw opinions and different things about you. And, you know, I have 320,000 Twitter followers and like 110,000 Instagram followers. And, you know, it seems like everybody's so interconnected. And now I have a book out which tells you absolutely everything about my fears and what keeps me up at night and what makes me cry and all of those things. And so, yeah, but it's also kind of cathartic or therapeutic. I don't necessarily know the difference between those words. I'll let somebody smarter than me tell me which one it is, but it feels good to kind of go through that cleansing, because now you just walk out in the world and everybody knows everything about you. So, you know, you can just kind of live free, and you live free and you don't have that inhibition because you just spoke your truth. I talk about my mistakes, my successes, my failures, things I would do differently, what I've learned from things. It's a really good feeling. But that's a really good question, Liam. Really good question. Introspective question.
Thank you, Liam. All right, Clea, do you have a question?
Okay, I have 3 questions. A little bit. My first question is, how did one of these challenges affect you personally?
You're breaking up on me. I couldn't hear you.
How did these things affect you personally?
How does what affect me personally? The book?
I mean, like going to here after you in society with your family and people you know.
I couldn't hear the question. Did you hear the question, Jason? I couldn't hear it.
Clea, do you want to type it in the chat box and then we can read it? Would that be okay? So why don't you chat it, and I'm going to go to Jack, and then we're going to come back to you next, okay? So type it in the chat.
What would we do without Zoom? Look at that.
I mean,
Zoom.
all right, so Clea, we'll come back to you. Jack, I think it's Jack Woodward, and then we'll come back to Clea.
All right, yeah. So I guess I wanted to thank you for doing this. It's a big deal. And so my question is, the Orangeburg Massacre is like a big deal in South Carolina's history. It's kind of been lesser known by a lot of people, and obviously your dad took part in it. So I guess how did that like affect you growing up and like knowing about that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just growing up and knowing about it. It was living through it. You know, my father was shot. He lost friends that night. 3 people were killed: Henry Smith, Samuel Hammond, and Delano Middleton. None of them were older than 19 years old. One was actually still a high school senior. He was just there he used to walk his mom home from school. She was a maid at the college. They were just protesting the All-Star Bowling Alley. They wanted to, you know, be able to bowl like the white kids could, you know, and they went back to their campus. A lot of people forget they were actually shot on their campus. And so while my father was shot, he went to the hospital. And when he got to the hospital, like, they arrested him. And then they took him to jail. And so this is a little known secret. I-26, you know, I-26 between Charleston and Columbia, or, you know, where you pick it up in Orangeburg, right? Well, I-26 between Orangeburg and Columbia, for the only time in our state's history, was completely shut down. Everybody who was on was forced to get off, and everybody who wanted to get on was blocked. And so they transported my father like that from the Pink Castle, which is what they call the Orangeburg City Jail, up to CCI. And then they denied his bond. They denied his bond. He was housed for about a month. And they put him on death row. They housed my father on death row because they deemed him to be an outside agitator. And his death row cell, for those of you all who are above the age of 13, you can Google this, but his death row cell was next to a young man named Pee Wee Gaskin. Pee Wee Gaskin is a legend in South Carolina. His name is Pee Wee because he was tiny, but he also killed absolutely everybody. He actually killed somebody in prison with a radio bomb. It's just, his story is just kind of fascinating. But my dad was in a cell next to him. I actually went to CCI before they blew it up and tore it down, and got a chance to visit my dad's old cell in death row. He later went to trial. All the officers who fired shots into the group of students were tried. They were all found not guilty. They tried my father, backdated the indictment, charged him, and convicted him of rioting. and he became the first and only one-man riot in the history of this country. And so, my sister's middle name is Abadame. It's Swahili. It means born while father's away, because my sister was born while my father was in prison. There's this great picture of my mom and dad sitting next to each other. They both have these huge afros, and my dad's holding my sister and feeding her a bottle on the prison yard. It was the first time that he had been able to see his first child. And so it was just a very tough, for me growing up, you still kind of live with that anger. You still live with that trauma and that pain. Practically speaking, I tell people often that imagine you're a Black man in the South with a felony. How difficult that is, how difficult it was for my mom to give birth. I mean, you have to go to birth by yourself. You have to raise a newborn by yourself while you worry about your husband being in prison. You got this little baby, then your husband gets out, he has a felony, and the difficulty thereof. And so it just helped mold my perspective and gave me this desire to try to, be the change I wanted to see in the world. That's a really good question as well.
Thank you, Jack. Bakari, Clea's questions about, in Denmark, you're well known, you have all this family, these people know you, and so then you sort of ventured out from there into the greater world where you're not known. How did that experience change you?
Well, it's interesting because it's weird, because I always wanted to be a change agent, and I always wanted to go out there and, wake up in the morning and change the world, right? I didn't quite know how I was going to do it. First, I thought I was going to be a doctor until I took biology for majors in college, which is, told me real quick I couldn't be a doctor. And so I ended up going to law school in Atlanta, and you're right, nobody really knew you. And I think back to those days all the time when you had no pressure. And see, now I'm usually flying everywhere. I have to wear a hoodie when I go out. I try to keep people from walking up to me and talking to me when I'm with my family. That's like the only time I won't engage you in conversation. Like if I'm sitting there having dinner with my family, like I don't want you to come up there and yell at me about Bernie Sanders, right? That's not cool. Happens a lot, but that's not cool. I was walking, this is a true story, like in March before quarantine, I was walking down Market Street, and this guy, he just walked by me and he was just like, "Go Trump." And you just being kind of known, it has its pluses and minuses, but I'm very privileged and very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do the things that I'm doing. But in my life, it's been adjustments from going to a very well-known community to I was in Atlanta. How many of y'all are 16? Raise your hand. Anybody 16 or older? All right, I see a few. Imagine being in college at 16 in Atlanta, Georgia, away from your parents. You can get into any club you want to get into with a college ID, right? It was insane, right? So that was my, that's kind of where I was, and I had to mature quickly. And nobody really knew I was 16 until I write about this, until my mom sent me happy 17th birthday balloons to my dormitory. What mother does that, right? Like who does that to their son in college? Everybody was like, "Why you got these?" I was like, "Man, because I'm turning 17. That's why." And so it was a really, really unique experience, but it was one I had to mature through. And then coming back home, running for office, then everybody else knew your name. You're in the LA Times, Washington Post, all those things. They're like, "Who's that young guy?" And now being on TV, you kind of elevate a little bit more. And now when you go out, I consider myself a D+ list celebrity, D+, C- on a really good day. Election season, well, I might get C-, because this is how you tell, because people stare at you when you go out and they're like, "You look familiar. I know you from somewhere. Do we work together?" And you're like, "No, I'm on CNN." They're like, "Oh, that's it." So they don't really know you. You just kind of look familiar. So that's like D+ list. And it's just, it's a unique feeling, but you get a chance to change the world. So I'm all for it.
Oh, that was good. Ben Flessis, you're up.
All right, thank you for doing this. And the Washington Post said you wanted your book to spark tough talks about race. Was that your original goal when you were first writing the book?
So yeah, my goal was to tell my story in an unabashed, truthful manner. But so first of all, you never want your book to come out in the middle of a pandemic. That's first. Like that's not your optimal time to sell a book. but God works in mysterious ways. There's no way that I thought that we would have a book come out during the middle of a pandemic that disproportionately affected African Americans. Then it came out a week before George Floyd, after Ahmaud Arbery, around Breonna Taylor. And so it like came out at the right moment. And you're like, I'm sitting here doing a book tour. I did a book tour with no pants on. Like, I didn't wear pants. I sat here in front of my computer like every day. I think it's the first, right? Just around the world, doing news and stuff around the world and never having to leave. Everything was on Zoom. And so you don't get a chance to go out and sign books and all of those things. But I wanted my book to be able to give people a sense of pride and a sense of understanding, and spark very courageous but difficult conversations around the issue of race. And I think I might have hit the mark with that one.
Thanks, Ben. All right, Meredith, your question, please.
I have two. So why did you go to college at 16?
So I was in kindergarten for a semester. And then I got a phone call when I was home for Christmas that told me they didn't want me to come back to kindergarten. But in January, they wanted me to go to first grade. That was cool. Then my mom called me inside in summer, right after July 4th. And she said, they don't want you to go to second grade either. They want you to go to third. And so it was a pretty weird experience. Imagine sitting in a class and you were just in kindergarten and you walk into a class with everybody who was just in second grade. And they're like, who is this little guy walking in here? And so I just crept in and sat by myself. And the blessing is I grew, right? I got bigger. So I ended up like matching the size. And I always tell people, if you want to skip, if a child wants to skip or needs to skip, make sure you do it at a younger age, so they have the ability to mature with that class and grow with that class. So by the time I got to 8th and 9th grade, there was no difference in maturation because I had been with them for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And so you couldn't tell the difference maturity-wise between those who were 12 and 10. So that's how I got to high school at 12. And I went to, at the time, we've lost a lot of population, but I went to the largest Black high school in the state. I went to Orangeburg Wilkinson High School. So that was a very, very interesting experience for a young kid to go to. We had like 3,300 students. It's now a 3A school because of the population being, just leaving some areas in South Carolina. But that's a good question. What's number 2?
Are you a lawyer?
I am a lawyer. You want to know a joke, Meredith?
What?
What do you call the person who finishes last in their law school class?
I don't know.
A lawyer. That's a really bad dad joke. I've officially become that person now.
I really want to be a lawyer when I grow up.
You should. We need more good lawyers. And so I am, I practice at the Strom Law Firm in Columbia, South Carolina. I do everything, but I don't do any family law and no immigration work. And I love it. I'm in a courtroom all the time. I represent some amazing clients. I do criminal work. I travel around the state, around the country. It's just a fascinating experience. And being a lawyer, you get a chance to help people, which, again, Meredith, everybody on this call, I just want you all to be change agents. I don't care what profession you choose, but make sure that you become a part of something larger than yourself, and that we are creating a more perfect union and, ascribing to what Abraham Lincoln said, by believing in the better angels of our nature.
Bakari, we have like 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to try one more, and maybe you can decide if we have one more after that. But this is Pi now. Pi, your question, please.
Hi. I saw that you're on the board of directors for Let America Vote.
Correct.
And with that perspective, what do you think about mail-in voting, and especially with the obstruction of USPS operations?
So look, I'm a proponent of mail-in voting, but I'm gonna be real with all y'all. We ain't getting nowhere near universal mail-in voting between now and November 3rd. So you might as well just tell your parents, put a mask on and go vote, right? I'm voting October 5th. I think that's the first day that you can vote early in person. I'm putting a mask on. I'm going down to my Bamberg County voter registration office, and I'm gonna cast my ballot. I would suggest everybody else do that too. Unfortunately, the USPS has become a political football. It needs to be funded properly. It needs to be set aside from political influence. But unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. And, not only has it gotten caught in the kind of whirlwind of voting, but, I know many a veteran who have not been able to receive their prescriptions on time because of the delay. I challenge all of you all to put a letter in the mail today and mail it to Columbia and see how long it'll take to get there. It's ridiculous. It just is. And so as a board member for Let America Vote, where we want free, safe, and secure elections, if you want your ballot counted on time and no games, especially in South Carolina, go vote. Everybody who is turns 18 before October 3rd, I believe, is eligible to vote. So make sure you guys and everybody 18 years old, that's on Jason, should be registered to vote.
Bakari, how you feeling? You want to do one more? You want to call it a day?
Do one more.
All right, Violet, what do you got?
Hello. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to talk with us. And thank you so much for sharing your personal stories and experiences. My question is, do you feel that social media has played a positive role in deconstructing racism and inequality in our country?
It's played a role. I mean, positive is, I guess it's all how you use it. Like I use social media all the time, right? But has it played a positive role? I guess it depends on the individual person that's using it. I think the biggest problem with social media is that we don't communicate anymore. It's very difficult to have a conversation about race in 240 characters. You just can't do it. And people lose personal connections, and people also say things on social media they would never dare say to your face. And so it's a weird nexus. I wish we would have more intimate, personal conversations. That's the only way we're going to have a level of empathy and understanding that's required in these conversations of race. We won't fix the problem on social media. I don't know if we exacerbate the problem. I think old people say that all the time. I don't think that's the case either, but we definitely can't fix it on social media.
Well, who's our special guest here, Bakari, before we leave?
That's Stokely. He just woke up from his nap.
Oh, look at that handsome man.
Wave at him. Say bye. You gonna say bye? He's giving you bye-bye.
Hi, Stokely. Say to your sister, mom, and brother. Say it to everybody. But thanks for today. We look forward to seeing you in the coming weeks. You've been very generous with your time, and it means a lot to us.
I'll see you guys next year. Just call me, okay?
Got you covered. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye, Stokely. Bye, Bakari.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. We did it.